All right, guys. Hello and welcome to the Guest Life Podcast, episode 64. This one's going to be special. Construction. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. But my dear friend Seif El-Sahly is here. Thanks so much for coming in, Seif.
Thanks, Dan.
We were talking before this podcast just about taking our branding and marketing to the next level. So today we're going to talk real estate, everything about it when it comes to construction, building an incredible brand. And I think I'm going to get into I'm going to ask some dirty questions just about what you got to do to be different.
Yeah.
And if there's anybody I know that can be different, it's you.
I think you asked a lot off the mic, specifically about Miami. So.
I think we're gonna follow Manpower Demolition and start a brand there. It's gonna called Condos Are Us or something like that. So we start off the podcast, guys. Just thanks so much for tuning in. Without entrepreneurs and leaders in the community like Seif, this podcast doesn't exist. That being said, when it exists, you guys are listening in. So not just my mom's listening, but everybody else. Thank you for being here. And nice. Today's show is going to be special. What was your first paid job?
I was an intern for a construction company in Montreal, actually.
See, I didn't know that.
No.
That was your first paid job?
Yeah.
What age?
I was lucky enough that I didn't have to work when I went to school or anything. So My family always provided for us. And my first job was after I had got into engineering.
Okay.
I got a design engineering job in Montreal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was just going to try to butcher some French words, but do you know how to speak French?
Hell no.
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 You'll get it going, eh?
No.
And so tell us a little bit about Newfore and how you got started.
My last paid job that I had, the first year when I worked there, I busted my ass, stayed overtime. I did all that. I wanted to grow the company. I was always really ambitious. I had massive goals. And I remember sitting around Christmas time and we did our annual review. And the manager sat me down. Obviously they give you all the good and the bad, but I'm like, I knocked this out the park. I did amazing. He gives me a letter and he's like, okay, you did amazing. This is a big thank you from us. I'm like, that's amazing. So we shake hands and then he heads off. I open the envelope and I got an annual raise, gross, of $1,000. And I was like, the fuck is this? I wasn't happy about that.
Yeah.
Because to me, I had busted my ass and I got what translates to like $20 a paycheck type of thing. So at that point, I kind of knew that I really need to seriously consider somewhere that's going to value my time, where the expectation could be in line with whatever my goals are, because I'm really ambitious and I got some big goals. So if it's not valued here, it's going to be valued somewhere else. And that's when I started venturing out, trying stuff on my own.
Yeah. And so where was that job? Did you say engineer?
Yeah, I was an engineering firm in Toronto.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's crazy too, right? Especially nowadays and age when people are kind of pulling for different types of jobs. I get a lot of people asking me what do I get into? And it's like, well, go look at somebody that's doing it successfully and then reverse engineer it. Mm. But some firms they're not there, right? Yeah. Where they're at in their career or where they can start at. Mm. So what got you into construction then?
Well, I studied engineering.
Yep.
And I've always been exposed to it. I always loved it. I started buying, after I bought my first house, a few months later, I saved up some more money. I bought my first rental. I've always been into real estate and construction. I love it. So naturally, I started venturing out in that space. When I first started, though, I thought, home building and stick, I thought I was smarter than everybody else. Stick build is no good. I could do it way more efficient. I have this great idea to do it prefab. So I wanted to build homes out of prefab containers, and then that obviously didn't work.
What age was that?
That was around 25.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I first came up with the idea, Newfore, the new way forward in home design.
Okay.
I wanted to build container homes. I found out for many reasons why it's not really possible.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's hard because of how the economy is, and the land cost is just so much of it. So it's like, it's not really the framing or the stick build that ruins it versus putting in an actual container.
Totally.
So that idea didn't really work out, but at least it was a bit of a pivoting point where I could start getting into construction and renovations and the space that I'm in right now.
Yeah. And are you happy with where you're at?
Yeah, I love it. Every day we're growing, and then now we're at a point where we have a solid team. And, you know, everyone always talks about the team, but like everybody that's like directly reporting to me, where it's my direct team, they're phenomenal. They're excellent at what they do. And they even like motivate me, because a lot of the things, they're specializing in just one component of the business, and they're so good at it that we're just pushing that to bigger and bigger limits. And they're really ambitious too. So I love when they come back to me and they're saying, okay, well, I want to close X number of jobs this month. I want to close X number of jobs this year. You know what I mean? To me, I think, what can I give you so you can do that? And that really motivates me too. It's fun. Who wouldn't like that?
When did that like change in terms of like moving into building a team and growing that way? Like how hard was that to get to?
I think it's a bit of element of luck as well, right? You got to have the perfect recipe. For us, it was maybe a year and a half ago is when it really changed. It's usually you get one person that's really, really good at it, and then they do an excellent job. And then at the same time, you give a little bit of slack and you give up the reins a little bit. And you're like, wow, they're doing a better job than I did. But what if I could do that with everything? And then my full-time job could just be giving them what they need. So that shift in thinking was maybe a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And how long you been in business?
Well, I started in 2016.
Okay.
But when you start a business, it's just a piece of paper, right? Like first 3 years are nothing.
Yeah.
Like, well, what do you really do?
I feel the exact same way.
You build your website for 1.5 years.
Yeah. For $4,000.
Yeah. And then for 6 months after that, you beg your friends to, you know, give you Homestars reviews.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have over 100, then you know the friends and family out there.
Yeah,
it's funny, man, and it's interesting that you say that, like started in 2016, but didn't talk about how long you've been in business. A lot of people talk about business and age and how they correlate, and I've got this concept around it's like your age in business, like how old is your business? So when you're comparing, say you're 30, you've been in business 5 years, and you're comparing yourself to that 40-year-old. Right? So you're 3/4 of the way to that 40-year-old. It's like, no, you're not. You're actually half the way there, right? Or a third, because that person's got 10 more years experience than you if they start at 25.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? And then also every year is like, they talk about compound interest, but I talk about as long as you're learning and want to grow, but the compound growth that happens in business, I think is by far the biggest, has the biggest spread year over year.
Yeah. I mean, Alex Ramosi says it too. You know, he says, you want to get super successful and you want to do well, you need leverage. Leverage, there's different ways to do it. In our specific business, it's with people. If I'm in business for a year and it's just me and an assistant, it is not the same as me with 5 or 10 managers under me and 5 or 10 team under each one of them. Completely different. You have like a 1000x on the failure. Like you're failing that much faster and you're growing that much faster. So 1 year is not just 1 year. You can buy back your time if you have a solid team in place.
Totally. How do you find your team?
I love them. My team's amazing. Like,
how do you find them though? Like, how did they come to you?
Oh, should have clarified that.
I know you love them.
Yeah. I guess a bunch of different ways. A lot of people reach out to us on social media.
Really?
Yeah. But then we are very diligent with filtering people. So when we interview, we probably interview 3, 4, 5 times what you would expect for any typical job. We really have it down to a science. And then at the very end, we give them a Briggs-Myers test, personality test, 250 questions. And then I'm going to know 20 characteristics that you have, where you stand, and which ones you need for that specific job. So at the end, that's just a final check mark. It's like, okay, everything was passed on my end. Everything looks good on paper. But let's just do this final check. And I think it's those things where you just got to do it a little bit better. Those are the things that really make a difference, because that's the difference between, you missing something and you have a hire, let's say, that's not happy in 6 months and, they end up leaving and you have to rehire and retrain versus that happening less often.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, it's expensive, right? People don't justify those costs. It's like, it always pays to pay more.
It's true.
Always.
Yeah.
You get that better level of candidate. It's easier said than done. I remember back in the day, it's like, I can't afford to pay more, right? And, I think we tried to get to the top of that pay scale as soon as possible, where it's like, listen, just, you're going to attract better talent, you're going to have less headaches, and you're going to make more money. But it's a big Band-Aid to rip off.
Patrick Bet-David said it too. He said the biggest hack in business is finding someone, that candidate that requires 30% more pay, but they have 2-3x the output. And that's the secret. Because think about it. Any company that you admire, that you're like, okay, I want to be there one day. If you look at their staff, do you think every single one of them, wow, how did they get them at that price? Like, no, that's not the secret. The secret's not paying the least. I can give you the secret for paying the least. Just go on Kijiji, right? But that's not the recipe for success.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to find that nice sweet spot in the middle where that person's time is really valued, but they're so productive because they love it and they come in and that's the environment that they thrive in. So you have to get that perfect balance. And when you do, it's serious changes happening for your business.
Huge. Yeah. A year and a half ago, I love that. And you've attacked since then.
Yeah.
Let's go into social media, because I die at some of your social media stuff. And I know other people do too. The one recently when you were watching the construction fails.
Yeah.
That had me going.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't get it. Like I watched a video the other day and someone poured concrete below the rebar. Like, who?
That was the one I saw.
Who did that? But how did that not get caught along the way? Like, there could have been 20 different people that caught that, but nobody did. Honestly, it's impressive.
I'm impressed.
Like, how do you get form, or, for anybody that's listening, we're talking about a video where someone poured concrete and the rebar was 2 inches above the top of concrete. So it's not even in the concrete. How did nobody catch that?
The person that poured the concrete.
And the formwork guy and the guy that a million people could have caught it, like I said.
So while building a brand, obviously, Newfore, understanding was you got that first truck wrapped. I remember seeing the van. It was like, whoa. How hard was that for you to make that decision to get to that point?
To get the first van, it's not that difficult of a decision because everything is incremental. So you always, every single day, even today in my life, every single thing, getting towards a point where you want to be in life, you got to take these small digestible bits and you got to give it all your effort and you got to do it 110%. I don't care what you're doing. If someone is sweeping the floors, if someone is picking up material, if someone's wrapping a van, or if someone is scaling to have 50 active sites, you got to do it 110%. And it's the same thing with the van. That van, it was just one small step. You give it everything. You focus on the design. You pick the right van. You make sure that it serves your needs. And then you just pull the trigger. It's not that difficult.
Because they look great.
Yeah, I love how it looks.
They look great.
Yeah.
So where are you going to take this? How big are you going to get? Where are you going to go? Are we going to Miami?
Oh.
Bahamas, maybe? Where are we going to go? Are we going to start building somewhere else?
Don't get me excited. I find that I always think that, and a lot of people think that. You start to think international and things like that. But the reality is there is so much that still needs to be done here. Like, if anybody thinks you got to go to Miami to make more money, like, look at Ellis Don. I don't know how many tens of billions they do a year. So there's so much more opportunity in your local backyard that I'm staying here until every single drop is squeezed out.
I love it. Well, because you spread yourself, right? I remember when we made the decision to go from like Hamilton to Toronto, it was, why are we going there, right? It was, are we servicing everybody that we can in Hamilton? Are we servicing, or like, do we need to go to Toronto to get more business, or do we need to increase our scope? And so a lot of people are like, why'd you go to Toronto? And that was where we came to the decision, we're not going to be able to grow to the scale by staying in what we do in Hamilton, and understanding that we can do that in both Toronto and Hamilton, but stick with what we're good at. And so when I hear about people, opening a business in Florida or going to the States or something like that, I find it interesting to unpack why. And the only thing I can think of is that it's warm there.
Yeah, that is true. Because it's hard to see how, as a Canadian contractor, you can have a serious competitive advantage in Florida. You might have a connection that we don't know of, and that's going to be your in the market. And if that's the case, you definitely should go there and start a business there.
Totally.
But if you don't have a competitive advantage, and money doesn't count, then why are you really going there? Put that money to use somewhere where you actually have an advantage.
Totally.
Sometimes business is boring, but we don't always have to go after what's shiny and exciting.
Let's roll that back quick. Sometimes business is boring.
Yeah.
That's hard to hear. But
it is.
It's so correct.
Yeah, it is, because not every day is exciting and you wake up and, what's new and what's going to go my way today? Sometimes you're going to take punches in the face, but you got to wake up next day, take another punch and keep going, because that's when you start seeing results, right? It's about failing fast. No success story do you look at them and say, wow, look, they didn't make any mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe professors and PhD candidates, they don't make mistakes, I guess, But hey, if that's your path, you do you. It's not mine, though.
Well, when with the college, I have a professor, and he was the dean of laureate, Bruce Arai. He's the partner in the college that we started, and we just had our grand opening, and he was speaking, and I was like, man, you didn't skip a beat, just captivated the room. Messed up a name. It was just, he was trying to get a politician's name, and he said, last name? I would have been like, oh my God, I forgot his last name, right? Yeah. It's just crushed the room. And I go, man, you speak beautifully. He's like, yeah, I used to suck in front of 150 people when I first got my license to teach. And everybody sucked. Everybody sucks. Yeah. And I think one of the big takeaways is you can't be passionate about something you suck at.
It's true.
Or can understand or enjoy, right? It's like your first cigar. How was that? Shit.
Yeah, I probably didn't like it that much.
No, it was horrible. But you knew you wanted to smoke cigars because you saw what you wanted. And now I could tell you what a cigar is before you take the band off. I'll tell you what cigar it is. Give or take, right? And I'll tell you if it's an expensive cigar or a cheap cigar. Just like a scotch, right? I know if I'm drinking Jack Daniels or if I'm drinking Macallan's.
Yeah, for sure.
But when I started, everything was shit, right? And I think that's where people try to find their passion. Or they're saying, I got to do something I love. You got to learn to love it. When you say, no one's passionate about something they suck at.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. I mean, I can't even add to that.
Yeah. So going through, how do you manage your time these days? You're talking about your team, talking about growth.
Yeah.
You got a great lifestyle from what it seems, as I know you pretty well.
It's pretty damn good.
Yeah. How do you do that?
I live off my calendar. So, work hours 7 to 5, my team has complete control of.
Awesome.
Anything can get booked in, and that's time that I have to devote to everybody on the team, and they have the flexibility of booking whatever time with me during those hours. Outside those hours, I balance it between, friends and family, fitness, and then, travel, and a small percentage of the time towards other ventures, let's say. So always looking at other opportunities that are outside what we're doing. I don't spend too much time on it because, you want to grow the main flywheel, so to speak, right? Yeah. But I always spend a little bit of time just looking outside to see if there's any low-hanging fruit that we could go after.
I love that. Yeah. Anything you found recently?
Yes. It's sold but conditional, so I don't want to get into I don't want to jinx it, but a building on King Street, one of those abandoned buildings.
Oh, nice.
Not heritage, but heritage interest. Stunning building. So we'll see. Hopefully it closes in a couple months.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Well, how do you calm your mind down as an entrepreneur? How long did it take you to be that calm?
Yeah, honestly, I don't, that's a hard one because at the beginning you get rattled at everything, and I think it's one of the, it goes back to those failing fast. If something stresses you out, but it happens to you 100 times, it's definitely not going to stress you out. So it's like just push through it. And I think stress is caused by you leaving things on the back burner and not taking any action, even if it's small things. If you wake up and your heart's racing, I guarantee, and it happens to me all the time, I guarantee you there's something that you put in the back of your mind that you're not actioning. Sit, think about it, see what it is, and do it real quick. It could just be one phone call.
Yeah.
And even if they don't pick up, you leave a voicemail and then you text, automatically it's going to go away. So it's like you have to go after those things that are making you nervous, because if you put anything on the back burner, it's going to put you in a state where you always feel anxiety and then you can't perform 100%.
Yep.
Sounds like something's stressing you out.
Yeah.
Tell me then.
We go eat the frog. Yeah. It's called eat the frog. So what's your frog every day? So it's like eating the frog is the worst thing that you're going to be doing. So you might as well do it at the beginning of the day so you can enjoy the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. Instead of having that stress of, I got to go eat this frog later. It's like, you gotta do it. It's got to get done.
Yeah.
Let's do it in the morning. Start the day. That's why a lot of people go with the gym, right? And then all of a sudden the frog tastes good. You're looking forward to the frog.
Yeah.
But identifying that as I find it's critical.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely helps too. I go to the gym every single morning before work starts. I find that how your morning routine is how you set the tone for your whole day. If you wake up, and I don't care what time you wake up. I don't care if you wake up at 7. I don't care if you wake up at 4 or 5, whatever it is. But whatever that time is, if you decide to press snooze, it's like you now automatically get into that habit, that mentality where something is bothering me. I'm going to take the comfortable route and I'm going to put this on the back burner. Where do you think that's going to take you once you walk into the office and then there's fires to fight?
Totally.
And then you have 2-3 big problems with your team. You think you're going to come out on top, or you're going to snooze that too? You're going to end up snoozing. So everything you do, you got to do it properly, and then you got to go after it. And even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, just push.
Were you always like that?
I was always like that, but I got better over time because experience builds you, and that kind of experience builds character. I always had that tendency, but I also had the tendency where little things I would obsess over. If the smallest issue, I might lose sight of the big picture. And now it's not like that anymore because experience fixes that. But I always had that style where if something is bothering me, I got to go after it. If something I'm weak at, I got to do it more so I don't feel as uncomfortable. Because I was really bad I used to stutter a lot when I would speak. It would make me so nervous. Like my heart, like I would feel it all the way up in my throat.
Really?
Yeah. And then I just started speaking to people a lot, and it kind of goes away because when you do that, you start identifying points that you're weak at. You're like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not confident because I don't know what I'm talking about. So why don't I just find out what I'm talking about and be good at it? And then automatically you're like, okay, this is easy because, you don't have to show this facade or anything.
Hey, be yourself.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I find it's such a journey as an entrepreneur, depending on how you're an entrepreneur, right? Like introverted, extrovert. Obviously, I'm like a Labrador puppy fucking running around the door and bring everybody a treat or something like that. But, to hear that you used to stutter, I got a good friend of mine, same thing. And you don't think that. It's like even, doing a podcast on Saturday morning. It's like, I used to sit here sweating, so nervous. Do I grab my drink? Do I make a noise? Is there something happening?
Yeah.
And the nervousness, and it's just like repetition. Like I always say no one starts as a morning person, you become a morning person. Right? Because you transition to what's more important, the morning or the night, right? Your priorities change. And I always go like, well, I can't get up in the morning. Well, what time do you go to bed?
Yeah.
If you go to bed at 8:30, you're going to get up, right? If you go to bed at 12 and expect to get up at 5 on a routine, it's not going to work. So Miami nights, that might change, right?
Miami's a different story.
You don't really need to sleep there.
Yeah, you gotta sleep late for obvious reasons, and you gotta wake up early for 100%. The day parties.
Of course.
That's a routine you cannot break.
You can't miss those. Critical. But it's a different lifestyle, right? Because on Monday, Tuesday, you're just sleeping all day.
Well, hey, I don't know about you. Monday's live in Miami too. So
I mean Wednesdays. So, you're talking about an entrepreneur, you're talking about managing your time. You're probably the calmest guy I've ever had on the podcast. Trying to build your energy up. What gets you excited?
I think now
Business,
we have
personal.
Yeah, now we have big goals. It's just more of what we're doing right now, because I know that for us to do double of what we have today, we have to put brand new systems in place. It's not just like, because I'll be less involved in the day to day. So it's a very big difference when you're small to do double, because all you got to do is work more. Maybe you got to make a hire. But then when you already have a team set up and you want to get to double, you got to put brand new systems in place. And that's kind of exciting for me. We're going through that phase right now where I like it a lot, because like, these are new challenges. I would have never thought that we had to do this, all these systems in place. Now, instead of it's one way to manage one project manager. It's another way to manage 10 project managers, completely different. Because one project manager, you can just walk up to their desk, right? But if you want to have a lot more than that, you got to put different systems in place,
And where are you finding the systems?
Reading a lot of books.
Yeah?
Yeah, the one I just mentioned right now, last one I read was Scaling Up.
Yep.
And it's like, it gives you really tangible information to use. And you take that and massage it to what you do in your business. But when I first started business, I went to this, it's a 1-year course by an institute called the Art of Management Institute.
Really?
And I'll just give it in one line. It basically teaches you to manage a business using statistics. And then now that I just read Scaling Up, that's based on all Rockefeller's teachings.
Yeah.
It says that in more detail, because it says, okay, well, you have this position, what's their KPI? So now automatically you're just thinking about every single team member and their KPI. And it's weird, because when you give them the KPI, they get more clarity, and they have a lot more purpose as well. So it's different things now that excite me. It's a bit weird.
No, man. You just in different rooms with the right people. Mm-hmm. I joined a co-work, what's it called? Peer coaching group, like peer group, essentially. And I'm normal there.
Yeah.
Like you're not a crazy person anymore.
Nobody calls you obsessed.
No.
Nobody calls you extreme.
No.
Says you need balance in your life.
There's not even fucking close. Like I was at a networking event separate from that last 2 nights ago in Toronto. And there was a woman up there on a panel discussion. And she goes like, I'm sick of getting advice from people that aren't where I want to be, telling me that I need to be home with my kids more. And it was crazy to hear it from a mother's perspective. Like a female entrepreneur that's like, I know my kids aren't getting my time, because I know at this point in my life that I want to provide more for my kids later. And I'm okay with it not being what other people want it to be, right? Like, well, you got to spend more time with your kids. They're going to grow fast. That's your decision. That's what you think is important. Mm-hmm. What I think is important is this. And I think there's no right or wrong, but it's nice to hear that you're not wrong so much, because you're connecting with people that are doing what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
And I find at an entrepreneur, at a high level entrepreneurial level as well, it's not about always having people to agree with you. I find it's almost more conflicting. Because people will call you out on your shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing we have that's really, really good on our team.
Conflict?
Yeah, I allow it completely.
Yeah.
As long as you have the respect there. Just because someone shat the bed doesn't mean they need to be absolutely destroyed and humiliated in public for it. Like, not that extreme, but if something is off and it's a closed door meeting, you can definitely call it out. So I think that's a really good culture, because many people are really, really good at specific things.
Yeah.
And the odds are you're not as good as all of them in every single little one. So why not give up the reins and then let them make that decision where it's going to take that specific task to another level.
Totally.
That's been an absolute game changer for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're younger, you got the pinky ring going, you're an engineer, What advice today would you give to your younger self?
I think it's not academia related at all. I think everything at this point becomes more behavioral. And as the years go by in your life, you start to see that why the behavior matters more than very specific pieces of advice. But I would take the same risks I took today, but do it a little bit earlier, because then back to the fail fast, I would fail a lot faster, a lot quicker. And I think that would put me in a better position earlier. So you don't realize when you're young how much time you actually have and how little you have to lose. Because when we're young, we start thinking, oh, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose my $100 or I'm going to, who gives a shit? You know, you have another 50 years to go.
Yeah.
So you don't realize how much you have when you're young. You got so much time and you have so little to lose. I would have taken big risks much earlier.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, my man.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
We could talk all day. We're going to continue to talk about our next trip, where we're going.
Yes. And if you need to know what to do on Wednesdays in Miami, no, it is not quiet. There's still places to go.
We'll find a spot. Guys, I can't wait. A little bit of the backstory. Seif and Newfore got a cool marketing strategy coming up. I can't wait to see it. But all Seif's handles, Newfore's handles will be in the bio. Check him out. You'll see how he's put a creative spin on construction and what he's doing in the industry as a leader, as well as all the things he does to give back. And just remember to ask yourself the question, just like Seif's advice, why not me? Why not now? What's the point in waiting? You're always ready.
Yes, sir.
That's it.